Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Nick Jain. He is the CEO of IdeaScale, a leading innovation software company. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you so much, Ajay, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. I know why you are smiling on the mention of India. I also know you have been in India for a long, long time, brought up by your grandmother. So we'll talk about that. Do mention along the course of that conversation, because my first question is not about innovation, but about your innovation journey and a bit about your life, before all this.
Of course.
Right. So carry on a bit about your background so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. So my name's Nick. I'm the CEO of IdeaScale, which is the largest innovation software company in the world. We've been around 15 years, are in 7 countries. Our clients include major organizations like Pfizer, Comcast, McKinsey, NASA, US Post Office, all over the world. Our software really helps large, complex organizations innovate better, faster, and more systematically. As for my personal background, I was originally raised by my grandmother in a small city in India called Gwalior, and then spent much of my childhood bouncing back and forth between India and Canada. Came to the United States for college, did a math physics degree there, worked on Wall Street for a while as a professional investor, did my MBA at Harvard Business School. And for the past 5 or 6 years, I have been a professional CEO. That means people hire me to run companies that are ready for that next stage of growth and progress. Along the way, I have run a $100 million revenue trucking company, a small $2 or $3 million revenue men's shoe company, and now IdeaScale, which is the most successful innovation software company on the planet.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a lot of achievements, Nick. And especially as a layperson, I know I've heard about these big names, but NASA comes to me very obviously. So I want to understand, how is your software helping an organization like NASA? What innovation are you helping? We thought NASA itself is enough for itself.
So look, all of the
Right.
organizations we work with are extremely successful organizations, right? They wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar organization or an organization that sent spaceships to other planets if they weren't big and successful already. But the problem with being big and successful, whether you're NASA or whether you're Pfizer, is that once you're big, you become really good at doing whatever you were built to do. And the challenges you were built to face 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever your history starts. And that makes you a little bit slower and less able to innovate and change directions when the need arises. And the world is always changing. You constantly need to innovate. Otherwise, your organization goes bankrupt if you're in the private sector, or outcompeted, or becomes anachronistic and not helpful to your constituents if you're in the public sector. So examples of how people use our software, and I'll obviously be a little bit circumspect here because I don't want to reveal our private client data, which I certainly
Absolutely.
don't have access to.
Right.
Let's imagine you are a big scientific organization. It could be a NASA, could be a Pfizer, could be an engineering research company. You have all these great scientists and engineers in your company. They're coming up with cool ideas for a problem that you told them to solve. You as the CEO, you as the head of engineering R&D. But what are the problems that you don't even think you know, that you're not even aware that you need to be solving, right? Who tells you what these problems are? If you're just the head of R&D has a very narrow focus in a company, he or she is not looking around what are all the other areas that could be coming to revolutionize your business or your industry. So that's problem number 1. We help you figure out the right problem you should be looking at in the first place. Number 2 is we allow you to access all the cool talents about your workforce that you don't know about. So you may have a great engineer named John. You know that they're really good at biochemistry, but did you know they know a lot about the octagonal patterns of beehives that may be really useful for engineering a spaceship styles? And then finally, sometimes you don't have the right people in your organization. No matter how smart, a NASA or Pfizer is, you only have a few thousand people. What if you want to tap the collective human brilliance of the hundreds of thousands or millions of scientists around the world, including those who may not speak the language that you speak? How do you do that? And that's where technology like ours really helps you, because you can go outside the boundaries that your organization has set for itself or you have set for yourself personally and tap collective human intelligence.
Absolutely. So I want to understand for the audience is a very simple question: why innovation matters within the organization when it can be given to companies like you, and if it is so easy for for getting help like organizations like yours, then why is it that some of these big organizations struggle with innovation? I want to
Sure.
understand the real problem on the ground.
Okay, you asked a lot of questions. So, firstly, becoming innovative is not easy, right? It's not something we think we make great software, but our software doesn't magically solve all of your problems. There's many things that an organization has to do. Number two is we don't innovate for your organization. I want to make that very clear. We're not helping. We don't come up with the great new ideas for Comcast or for Pfizer or NASA, or right. We help them come up with whatever ideas that they need to. Our software, it helps you do whatever you do already better. Think of it like, a CRM helps a good salesperson sell better, right? It doesn't create sales out of thin air. It doesn't create revenue. It's a tool, right? A hammer doesn't put the nail in for you. The human being still has to use the hammer to put in the nail. So going back to the specifics of your question, I think number one, when you're a large, complex organization, it's difficult to do anything new because that's not what you're set up to do. You were set up to do something already. So few things have to happen if you want to become more innovative, right? Number one, someone senior has to say, hey, this is a problem and this is a need. And if we don't solve this need, we will eventually go out of business or become shut down as a government agency. Innovation is not a choice. If you don't innovate, your organization ultimately dies. To put it more succinctly, innovate or die is a real maxim in the world. I think the former head of Intel used to say, only the paranoid survive. I think innovate or die is a parallel maxim. So number one, realize there's a real need.
Sorry to interrupt, but talking of Intel, Intel is facing, Intel did not follow perhaps what they said, and they are facing this existential crisis
Of
with
course,
NVIDIA.
that's an example I gave on an interview a couple of days ago. Intel, 20 years ago, Intel wasn't everything. It was in every computer you bought. And they did really well with that. But they didn't keep up and continue innovating and come into this new world of AI. And now NVIDIA is just absolutely destroying them. And they've had to make really difficult decisions as a business. They didn't have to make difficult decisions for 20 years, but eventually innovation catches up to you. If you don't innovate, someone out there is, and they're coming for you. It's an unfortunate story.
Sorry to break your chain of thought, but I thought I will lose out on this particular.
No, Intel's a phenomenal story, right? They were so innovative for 40 or 50 years, but that's not enough. You can't stop innovating just because you've been the best for 40 or 50 years. You have to keep innovating every day, every month, every year. Otherwise, eventually, your competition beats you. And that's a really tough reality. Doesn't matter whether you're in the United States or Taiwan or India or China or Russia. Like, everyone out there is trying to become better every day. And if you don't become better, they will. So going back to kind of how an organization becomes more innovative, they need to, number one, realize that innovation is important. Number two, they need to hire people who are actually innovative. Number three, they need to put in the right processes and incentives so people are encouraged to innovate. And number four, they need the right technologies and tools for their organization, right? It's like, the analogy would be if you want to become more healthy, right? Number one, you have to realize that you're not healthy. So number two, you have to get the right mindset and incentive. So you say, hey, I won't eat my slice of cake today unless I've been to the gym for an hour. You have to create an incentive structure for you. And you have to give yourself the right tools, right? If it's too, in India, sometimes it's too hot to run outside. So you may actually want a treadmill inside, or you may want weights inside or something, right? You have to make sure you have the right tools so you're actually able to go hit that fitness regime, despite the constraints that your atmosphere may impose on you. That atmosphere may be, in India's case, like a hot climate, or in a large organization's case, the lack of cultural imperative to innovate.
Right, Rick, right. So in terms of innovation, what is innovation? Is it about new product, new services, or something bigger than that? Or many people just say, do something that's incremental innovation. Does that qualify as innovation? Help us understand this.
Yeah. Innovation is a very broad term, but I boil it down to two things exactly. Number one, it's doing things that have never been done before. That's number one. Or number two, doing things that have already been done, but figuring out a better way to do them. And that can apply to almost any sphere of the world, right? It can be a new product, or it can be figuring out how do you manufacture an old product more efficiently, right? It's a product examples, but it could be innovation, could be how do we just run our company more cost effectively. More silly example could be we recently used our software to come up with a new company mascot. We never had any mascot before. So we actually asked anyone in the world, help suggest what IdeaScale's new mascot should be. And it was actually a new employee in South Africa who came up with what's our new company mascot. And so that's a form of innovation too. Innovation doesn't have to be the next iPhone or the next spaceship to Mars. It can be much smaller things, and they can be procedural things, because those are just as important to an organization as that big next new product.
Right. So how do you know how to build and sustain that innovation culture in the organization? Where to start? Even for big and even for mid-size or smaller organizations who would want to follow the path you set for them.
Sure. I think that there's two things you really, really need to do. Number one, there needs to be a cultural change. And number one, there needs to be a technology or tool change. By the cultural change, there's two elements that that organizations really struggle for. Number one, they penalize people for failing. And
Right.
number two, they don't reward people for succeeding. When you try to do something new, it's obviously going to be hard and you will fail a lot of the time, right? And if you start firing people because they failed at a new experiment or a new project, you're basically telling them we care more about you not trying to do something new than we actually care about you achieving something new. And that's a really bad incentive, because if someone knows when they try something new and they look stupid or they're going to get fired for when that experiment failed, they're not going to try it in the first place. They want to keep their jobs and not look stupid in front of their colleagues and bosses. So you have to take away the fear of failure and the penalties for failure. A good example of this is in pharmaceutical companies, where they may try out 1,000 chemicals to see if it cures a disease, and they know 999 of them will fail. And no one gets fired for that, because they know they're only trying to find one drug out of 1,000 chemicals that they're trying. Okay, so pharmaceutical companies generally do this part very well. Number two, you have to create the reward for what happens when you succeed. You want to reward employees or citizens or whoever's contributing to your success. You want to reward them. And that can be with money. It can be with praise. It can be with acknowledgement. Lots of ways you want to incentivize. You can create positive incentives. And then finally, on the tools and technology part, and I'm not just saying this because we run a software company, but when somebody wants to innovate, you don't just put them in a room by themselves with a pencil and say, go come up with something new. You have to give them the resources and tools they need to innovate more effectively. So I strongly encourage organizations to build some sort of tool set. It could be with fancy software like ours, or more simple tools like Excel, which may be perfectly okay for a small organization. But you really need to you can't just tell people go innovate. You need to give them the resources and tools they need to actually do something cool.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, when talking of innovation, nowadays the buzzword is AI. So, how does AI come in between? Does AI complement it, or it is a problem for innovation? How should we look at that? Because the brain will not innovate now; the AI will innovate for you.
Sure. So it's both good and bad news, right? If you lots of students now are just using AI to solve their math problems or writing essays for them. That's
Right.
great, but that's not helping innovation. That's not helping them. They're not learning. Companies where they just churn out the exact same AI-based marketing content constantly are not innovating. So AI, in that sense, has made it easier for people to be lazy and not effective. The good news is AI, when used by experts, can be incredibly innovative. So I'll use like a very simple example is you can use AI to do hundreds of iterations on a new product design that would have normally taken hundreds of hours or multiple weeks of work. So an idea is, let's imagine I have an idea for a new phone. I would historically have to send that to my art department, have them design the new phone. They take about 2 weeks. They'd come back to me, and then I'd say, change this, change that, change this. I don't like this color. I don't like the fact that it's smooth on the back, make it rough. I send it back to the art department. They spend 2 weeks doing that. They come back to me, and there may be 4 or 5 iterations of this. Now that iteration cycle can be cut down in the hands of somebody who actually knows how to use these tools well, to minutes or hours instead of weeks. And that is also true in the writing side of things, right? If you know how to use AI really effectively, then you can do really cool things with it. An example of this is if any of your listeners have ever taken courses on generative AI, there's actually a lot of free courses on how to use this stuff more powerfully. perfect example is the average person is saying, AI, write an essay for me about, I don't know, write a marketing blog post for me about fish because I sell fish as a business.
Right.
A smart person or somebody who actually has learned how to use AI more creatively, they would use something called the persona pattern and say, act as a world-class food salesman or food marketer. Next, you would say, AI, come up, you survey all of the other fish articles out, blog articles out there, and then come up with something that is not already talked about in these other articles. In that case, you forced AI to innovate in a way that it would be impossible for a human being to, because you're not going to go read 3,000 books on selling fish.
Absolutely.
But the AI can do that in seconds, as long as you know that you can tell it to do that.
Wonderful. And so, in that sense, what is the future of innovation? How does innovate? How will innovation? Because see, there was this whole idea about entrepreneurship, to get entrepreneurs within organization even when they are employees. But if you ask an employee to innovate, as you said, he or she will be more worried about their job, and then they also know that it is also good to keep on trying. So midway they get another offer, they go off. So how does that thing work? Means it is a situation, doldrumic situation for a founder also, or big organization also, how to keep such innovative, potential innovators within the organization. Do you have any ideas how to keep them beyond stock options or anything else?
Yeah, well, so let's go back to why would a smart person go start a startup in the first place, right? They either want to be their own boss, they want to be famous, or they want to make a lot of money, right?
Right.
Those are typically the three big incentives why someone starts their own company rather than working for somebody else. If those three incentives are matched within your organization, then that person has no desire to go outside. They would, I bet you the average person would love a great, if they know that they could become a billionaire with their startup idea and get a base salary and healthcare benefits while working in a company, they do that. But unfortunately, most companies don't create that opportunity. If you create something for that company, it's their intellectual property. They're going to make a bunch of money off it. And you're going to be some, junior employee who gets no fame, no recognition, no money, whatever you want in life. You just created value for somebody else. So the big challenge with the entrepreneurship model is organizations say, okay, we're going to create this, internal VC firm or this internal entrepreneurship or innovation group, but we're not going to reward them for the outcomes of their work. And though the people who are good at that realize, wait, I can get all of this, but do it under my own company, under my own brand, be my own boss, make more money, get more famous, work my own,
Right.
have more control over my life. Why wouldn't they? So if you're going to pursue the entrepreneurship model, you have to be very serious that you have to match the incentives that the person could get under their own startup or at a different company. More broadly, innovation in entrepreneurship is only a small part of how you can make a company more innovative, right? There's many aspects. Number one, you should be tapping the talents in softer ways of your existing workforce. Number two, you should be going out and acquiring other companies that are, or technologies that are innovative. Number three, you should be constantly improving your processes. Number four, you need to have a culture where, enough is never enough, right? You can't just say, I was innovative today, therefore I'm not going to innovate tomorrow. I came up with a cool product today, so I'm not going to come up with a cool product next quarter. No, every day, every month, every quarter, you need to be out there trying to get better and innovating. Otherwise, somebody else is. And that's a really tough reality of the world that you have to be cognizant of every day as a leader in any industry, in any government organization, in any NGO. Someone out there is trying to be better than you, so you need to be better every day.
Absolutely. You need to be better every day. And that brings me to this thing that you talk about, this idea of, meritocracy. Help us understand what is this all about.
Sure. So in most organizations, big or small, whose voice matters? It's the senior people, right? The people who have the biggest jobs or the fanciest offices, the senior people, or sometimes the loudest people, those who just are very good at talking about their ideas and saying it
Right,
very loudly.
right, right,
But those people, the senior people or the loudest people, don't necessarily have the best ideas. Some junior person who doesn't speak great English, who may be an introvert, who may not, maybe a little bit shy, he or she may have a great idea, and that idea never gets heard in most organizations, because even if they have a great idea, how do they get in front of the CEO? They don't, right? If the CEO sits in Madison, Wisconsin, and a junior employee is sitting in Japan, how does that junior employee's idea get to the CEO and actually get done? in most or in 99% of organizations, it doesn't. There's not a good way for ideas to be communicated across an organization and the best ideas to rise to the top. What our software tries to do, or what our software does, I think, really well is flips that paradigm on its head and says ideas matter, not the people who say them. So I'll use an example, again, a very silly example for going back to how we selected a company mascot. We asked anyone in the world, you could be a customer, you could be a prospect, you could be a random student, you could be an employee, submit ideas for what our company mascot should be. I submitted 2 or 3 ideas. A couple other employees submitted ideas. There were some external people who submitted ideas. And it was really funny. Of my 3 ideas that I submitted, 2 people hated. They got voted down. They went to the bottom of the pile. And it's really fun. And it had my name next to it. People know that they're voting against the CEO's ideas, right? But number 1, their votes are anonymous. So I can, even if I cared, I couldn't figure out who voted against my ideas. But secondly, as an organization, we realized it doesn't matter if Nick's ideas are good, or it doesn't matter if Nick is the CEO. Sometimes his ideas are bad. And we should get rid of Nick's bad ideas and have the good ideas float to the top. And so our winning submission was actually by a new employee based in South Africa who submitted a cool idea about a Sparky the Idea Pup, which we're releasing in a few weeks. But that is also how we make product decisions, right? So which features do we as a software company build? They're not just the ideas suggested by the head of engineering or by me or by the head of sales. They're the ideas that we as a company continuously vote on, and our customers actually vote on, which are the ideas that matter most. And so the best ideas get done, not the ideas from the most senior people or the people who are loudest or best at convincing other people of their ideas. The ideas win. And that's what an idea meritocracy is.
Absolutely. Ideas may win, and no one can stop an idea whose time has come. Something like, I'm putting it in my own words, but it is actually Victor. Victor, right? You go. Yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt there. The point is, like in many organizations, the time for good ideas never come because the organizations aren't set up that way. Software like ours helps those ideas whose time has come actually have their moment in the sunlight, in the spotlight.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you, Nick, about all these things, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn more about you, about your company, want to engage with your company. So what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure, 3 ways. Number 1, you can go to our company website, IdeaScale.com. If you're a small organization, less than 100 people, our software is totally free for you. So you can sign up totally free. Whether you're a 1-person company, a 100-person company, totally free. We're obviously for larger companies. That's where we, want to, that's where our business is. Number 2 is you can find me personally on LinkedIn, Nick Jain. If you search Nick Jain, I'm usually number 1 on the list. And number 3, you can actually email me at nick.jain@ideascale.com. I try and respond to 100% of emails and LinkedIn messages. So very easy to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.